Hi friends, Miss Quast here, and we are going to be making some art today. We're going to take some inspiration from Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Now if we look at Eric Carle's work, he uses paper collage, so he paints big pieces of paper and then he cuts them out to create these beautiful illustrations in his books. We're going to use the caterpillar as our inspiration, but we're going to use some different tools today. So this is something that you can easily do at home. I'll show you the tools that I'm using. I need a piece of paper, a pencil, an eraser. I'm using crayons. And then for the finishing touches, I'm going to add just a wash of color with some paint. Now, if you don't have paints at home, you can still do this same activity with crayons, and then you can go over top of it with markers. It's just going to give you kind of a different look. Okay, so I'm using scrap paper and it's cardstock. This is an extra piece of paper I had here at school. I'm back at school now, if you couldn't tell with the blue desk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to fold it kissing corners. Oh, that was a really long one. And I'm going to use my fingernail to gently crease that edge so I get a nice fold to my paper. Okay, so I've got it, and then the idea is when I'm done, I can stand it up so it looks like the caterpillar is a bit 3D. So it's the long and skinny way. So I took it from a landscape, folded it in half. What I want to do is I want to show that this caterpillar is moving. So I want to draw a guideline here. So I'm going to do a gentle swoop, just like that with my pencil. And I'm only doing it really lightly. I say press light till you get it right, because that's just a guideline and I'm going to end up erasing it. Now I'm going to be brave and bold, and I am going to work with my crayons. So I'm not going to draw this first. I'm going to choose a red crayon, and one of the things I like best about Eric Carle's work is that he has so much texture in his artwork. And he gets that by layering different colors of paint. It's not just a solid green. So we're going to kind of mimic that with our crayons as best we can. So I'm going to start by drawing the hungry caterpillar's head, and I'm going to press firmly with my crayon, and I'm kind of making an oval that's a bit flat at the bottom. And I'm going to get a dark green and do his eyes. And again, we're making that same kind of oval, and I'm going to shade that in, pressing firmly. Not hard enough to break the crayon, but if they break, we don't worry about it because broken crayons still color. And then I'm going to get kind of a light green or a yellow, artist's choice, and I'm going to put another circle around the eyes just to add some depth. And I'll do the same thing to the other eye. Okay, that's looking good. Now these crayons are a little bit crummy, so I'll just blow those extra crumbs away. I'm going to take that same green that I used for the eyes, and on the Very Hungry Caterpillar, his nose is a little bit of a triangle, but it has kind of rounded edges. So take your crayon and color that in. And that looks pretty good for now. Now, for his face, I want to use red, and maybe I'm going to also use an orange in there. And I'm going to do a little bit of scribble coloring. Your teacher probably says, no scribble coloring and no white peeking through. But we're okay with having a little bit because we're kind of mirroring that same technique. So I'm coming in and I'm adding just some scribbles. I'm not going outside of his head, but I'm just adding some color. Now I'm going to take my darker red and I'll do it a little bit careful around his eyes because I want that to look really nice and pop. Maybe you can trace it, and then that kind of helps your crayon know where it's going. And I'll just come in and fill in and go over top of, because we're adding that texture with that darker red color. And you might want to try this with a lighter orange. Eric Carle's Hungry Caterpillar actually has a bit of dark colors in it, so maybe you take, I don't know, a purple and just kind of put some little purple lines in there too, just to add a bit of texture. We call that texture, and it's adding interest to our picture. Okay, since I have my purple out, I'm going to draw the caterpillar's antenna. And so what I'm doing is coming up to the top of his head, and the hungry caterpillar's antennae look a little bit like bunny ears. So I'm going to swoop up and then bring them back down and color those in. And what I do on one side, I do on the other, but I'm going to swoop the opposite way. Now, just like we did with the eyes, it looks really funky if you take your yellow and you're going to follow around the ears again, just adding a little bit more visual interest to your picture. And if your line, I got a little bit carried away there and it got a little bit thick, but it doesn't matter. I can go back in and smooth that out a little bit. Okay, so I'm quite happy with his head. Now we have these guidelines here. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back and use the green that we used for the eyes, or if you want to switch it up, choose a different green if you've got lots of different options. And I want to do a similar shape to what I did to the head, but I'm going to make it a little bit skinnier. So I'm going to come and I'm going to start making some ovals like this. And I'm using that guideline to help steer me. And I'm making skinny ovals. And this caterpillar has been munching and munching. So he's getting really full, and each segment of his body is here. Now when I get towards the end of my caterpillar, what I want to do is start making my segments a little bit smaller. So can you see how they're just getting a bit smaller? And I'm at the end of my guideline, and I'll put one more kind of little bump there for his tail. Awesome. Now I'm done with the guideline, so I can take my big fat eraser, come in and just get rid of those pencil marks. Try not to erase the crayon because sometimes it gets a little bit smeary, but you know what? I'm not too worried about it if it does, because it just adds a little bit more visual interest to my picture. Okay, so I've got my crumbs gone. Now, this is that cool thing again. We get to do the scribble coloring. So I've got my green, and I'm going to come in each of the segments, and I'm just going to color like that. And you can see there's definitely white peeking through, but I'm not worried about that. And this is adding that texture. The caterpillars that my class was working with are called painted lady caterpillars. And they don't look like this, but their bodies are quite furry. So when we do these lines like this, it adds that visual interest and it makes it look like it's almost a little bit furry. Okay, then I'm going to grab a couple other greens. In this box I've got 3 different kind of greens. And I'm going to again go in and just kind of fill in some of those spots. And you can really get moving and grooving with this. The cool thing about leaving a little bit of white is when we do our color wash, we're going to see something cool happen. And if you want to change the direction that you're coloring, you can, because again, it's just going to add some interest to the viewer's eyes. I've got my 3rd color, and I'll just kind of go in there. This is quite light. I'm just adding a little bit. And you can choose what colors you like. If you want to do it totally fantastical and make a blue caterpillar, you go at it. Okay, so I've added my color. I'm quite happy with that. On the top of Eric Carle's caterpillar, it is quite a hairy caterpillar. So I want you to choose, oh wait, before we do that, we have to add our trusty yellow shadow. So just go and follow the segments, make those bumps, and that's going to give it that highlight. You can bring it down here. Now sometimes when we're working with tools like this and we're pressing really hard, sometimes our hands can get a little bit sore. So you can, I have to crack my knuckles, but you can do some finger push-ups. You can make a wiggly worm. You can make a snowball and throw it. Or you could do some spirit fingers, and that really just stretches out your fingers and it gets them ready to rock and roll. Okay, choose 3 of your favorite colors, artist choice. I'm a fan of blue, and I like this bright orange, and maybe kind of a hot pink. And I'm going to come and add a few little hairs to each of my segments. So I like to do all one color at a time, and he still has hair even though it's close to the top of my paper. I'm just taking that and going off the page. They're not super long, and you'll do that with all 3 of your colors. And you kind of layer them, and they look really cool when you drag some of the colors through the yellow that you did that highlight around. So add some hair. Go in with my pink now. This one, guy's really hairy. And I'm doing this really quickly, but you guys can go back and pause it once you know what the steps are, and then, or skip the video back and rewatch it. Okay, so he's furry, he's looking fabulous, but he's probably going to have a hard time getting around without any, that's right, did you say feet? Now, if we look at Eric Carle's caterpillar, his feet look like he's wearing little booties. So we're going to try to do that same kind of shape. And so I'm going to come up to the front of your caterpillar's body, and on one of those segments, I'm going to draw a little booty on him, and I'll shade that in brown. And maybe he put 6 on. I'm going to put another one because my segment's up really high like that. So maybe I'll put 2 on each of the front, and then I'll put 2 at the back. Caterpillars have many legs, but only a few of them are true legs that he uses for walking. The ones that are close to the front of the caterpillar's body are used for pinching and grabbing, and it can be to help climb. Okay, so right now you could be done your gorgeous caterpillar, and all you would need to do is to sign your artwork. If you want to kick it up a notch, you can do a color wash on it. So this is one that I did with my class, and we've painted over it with just a watercolor, and that's a really easy technique to do. If you don't have paints at home, if you go over top of it with a washable marker, you're going to get a similar effect. Crayons are oil, and we're using a water-based product with the paint, and what happens is we're creating something called a resist. Can you say that? A resist. So what I'm doing is adding water to my blue. You can choose a color that you like, but I think this is for my caterpillar. He's on a branch. And the water is going to soak into the paper where I don't have any crayon, but you're going to notice something cool when I brush across. Can you see how the crayon is resisting absorbing that paint? So any of those little places where I have some white peeking through, it looks really cool because the blue paint does seep in, but because oil and water don't mix, I can, the crayon, you can still see it because it's resisting absorbing all of that paint. Okay, when you're painting, make sure you start at one side and go straight across with your brush. And see how there's quite a bit of paint up here on his head? I just take my brush and I just keep it moving. And you can even brush it down a little bit. Okay, now once your caterpillar, your very hungry caterpillar, has dried, make sure you get some leaves for it so that it can get really, really big and chubby like in the Eric Carle story, and then it's going to find a safe place to form its chrysalis. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed The Very Hungry Caterpillar.